For most children, school can be fun, exciting, and challenging. But for those with special needs, it can be confusing, frustrating, and frightening, creating barriers to learning.
The biggest problem I see is developing in the areas of language and social skills, things that would typically develop through osmosis, through a child's learning through their observations. In these kids, we have to put a specific effort in teaching them these skills.
Most public and private schools are not equipped to deal with the myriad challenges that children with learning differences pose. Consequently, parents of children with learning differences are often perplexed about where to turn for help.
Jacob is now 12 years old, and he has a diagnosis of autism. And he started public school when he was 3 years old. I, over the years, attempted to work with the schools, work with the programs, work with attempting to help them understand the disabilities, educate them, and it really went nowhere.
For a program to be successful with dealing with children with learning differences, I think there needs to be, first, a willingness to work in a team approach with parents and other providers. Secondly, I think they have to have the ability to provide in their physical space a very warm and safe environment. The child has to feel safe to begin with before they can actually start the learning process.
However, there are facilities like CHILD, Children's Institute for Learning Differences outside Seattle, that are not only equipped, but expert in taking unique approaches with special needs children that often get surprising results.
I think a facility like CHILD gets results where others fail due to their willingness to partner with families, creating a consistency in the home and school environment, as well as their great experience in their providers. Experience goes a long way with dealing and coping with these issues facing our children.
Since coming to CHILD, Jacob now wants to come to school. He wants to do his work. He is trying new things, showing flexibility. He is taking pride in self-regulating his emotions, and he is starting to participate joyfully in social activities with his peers, which is huge for him.
Do you feel happy or anxious?
Anxious.
Yeah.
For Jacob, we worked on first feeling the feeling and then pairing it with the language, the vocabulary of the feeling. So when he feels scared, he had to learn the language, I'm scared. And he had no language like that at all. He had screeching and screaming. And so his therapist and he sat down and worked with picture icons and language below it, and he learned to use those words.
Jackie Moffat, who has Asperger's syndrome and an anxiety disorder, was called unteachable by the public school system. 6 months after being placed at CHILD, Jackie's mother Susan calls the transformation nothing short of miraculous.
You know, he's really socially happy in a way he's never been happy before.
Death would soon take this beautiful, unlucky bride down to the deep, dark kingdom of the underworld. Yes.
He was a pariah in his own mind, and that really tormented him. So, and he's a very, very social person. He's very outgoing and gregarious, so it was extremely painful for him to be so socially isolated. But here he just feels like he's found his place in the world.
Children with learning difficulties mostly need to feel safe in the world. If that's established, they can trust that the adults can be partners in their learning. If it's not established, then they have an even harder time achieving the second most important need, that I'm okay and acceptable just as I am right this minute. I don't have to be more, I don't have to be less, I'm fine right now. Then I know that you and I are partners in a trusting relationship. Now I can learn.
In 1977, when Trina Westerland's 6-year-old son was behaving impulsively and reacting to directions with frustration and tears, she sat him down to explain his condition. His response, "I thought I was broken," was the impetus for Children's Institute for Learning Differences.
There was a magic moment in my life. After having been a teacher for 10 years with special education children, a counselor to parents who were searching for services, and then the parent of a child who was struggling with his own development. There was a moment when I realized something had to be different for these children and their families, and I had something I could do about it. It was called Start Your Own School, whether you have backing or investors or anything at all. Just start, because there's something you can give back to the world.
Since starting with 4 students in a church basement, Child has grown to serve over 125 students per year from as many as 18 school districts throughout the greater Puget Sound region. Child believes behavior is the clue, not the problem. It partners with parents to create a safe, welcoming environment for them and their challenging child.
Our philosophy is based on one very sound belief, that children deserve help before they fail. My experience as an educator, an advocate, and as a parent was that children had to fail first in the system as it existed, that was back in 1977, before anyone caught them in the safety net called We Care.
Child believes in educating the whole student, identifying the unique range of emotional and sensory triggers that interfere with learning and socialization. With no more than 5 students per teacher, Child is able to place special emphasis on each student's social, academic, physical, and emotional development.
Child's developed its own 3 R's, the first of which is regulation. We've discovered that kids who struggle in school don't do well at handling their own level of arousal. They get too excited or too much or too loud. Without that self-regulation, they can't handle relationships with other people. That's the second R. To stay in a relationship and have it be successful, you have to be able to figure out what the other person needs. It's reciprocal. And the last R is resilience. If you can cope with what life dishes out to you every day, then you can make it in school.
Children's Institute for Learning Differences, creating a world in which every child succeeds. For more information about Children's Institute for Learning Differences, contact them today.